Welcome to Advent of Tessellations 2025. My name is Madonna Yoder, and you're joining hundreds of folders around the world on this 25-day journey into the infinite world of repeating patterns folded from a single sheet of paper. You'll discover many different twists in this challenge, building up to advanced patterns with flagstone motifs of trapezoid twists. Welcome to day 20 of Advent of Tess 2025. Today we're folding an extremely similar pattern to yesterday's, but with rhombus twists in place of some of the triangles. We'll still have triangle twists in the middle of the groups of trapezoids, but the 12 triangles in the middle and all of the pairs of triangles around the outside are being replaced by half as many rhombus twists. And if you look at it, the rhombus is 2 triangles. So there's a bit of math going on with that replacement. Let's dive in. We're going to start with 6 rhombus twists around the center, just like we did for a whole series of patterns, starting with day 9. So let's find the center of the paper first, and then zoom in. This will be side A. And for our pattern today, we are going to have our folds 2 spaces out from the center. And I'm going to be finding a rhombus twist up in here. These are going to be closed rhombus twists. And I'll have my mountain fold 2 spaces from the center, and this will be the through line of the rhombus, so I can go ahead and keep drawing it a ways out. Then my valley fold on the next direction around the center will be likewise 2 spaces out from the center point, and my new mountain fold will be 1 space out from the valley. This will be a diagonal of the rhombus. So the next mountain fold coming out will be 1 space further away. With this information, we can go ahead and pick up the paper. If you're doing this without drawing, then you're going to want to look for the mountain fold coming down and hitting the edge of the paper 2 spaces above this corner, with the valley 1 space further out. And on this corner, you want to look for that valley hitting the corner 2 spaces above this left side corner, with the mountain 1 space above that. And with that, we can go ahead and set up the rest of our rhombus twist. Another feature to look for is that the mountain on this side is still 2 spaces away from the corner, but because it's on the opposite side of the twist, the valley has swapped sides and is only 1 space from the corner. So that's another reference that you can use to verify that your rhombus is in the right place. And then we'll press to squash. And then flip the paper over. We can hold the paper up to the light and see where the center is on this side. We can also trace our grid lines out to the corners in multiple directions and verify that way as well. And then we're going to do exactly like we did earlier on. I'll rotate so that rhombus is above the center. And then we're coming to the point, so we've got 1 space of mountain fold in here. We are coming out 2 spaces and then adding our new valley fold. And these folds are coming together at a 120-degree angle. I also, when I'm looking at the paper, what's standing out to me is that this is a point of my closed rhombus central diamond. And so I'm going to have the rest of the pleats of my rhombus set up like this. And notice how I did not extend the second diagonal pleat. I'm letting it go one space out from the other side of that central diamond. And then, like we saw in days 10, 11, and 12, we're going to set up a three-way intersection of mountain folds above and a triangle wrap below. And both of these are going to wait until later to be folded. So unlike some of the earlier days, they're not triangle twists, they're not rhombus twists, they're actually going to feed into trapezoid twists. So that's fun. And we're going to let this one lay over top of the rhombus twist as we're squashing, just to get the bunchiness of the layers above what we're squashing. And then I will flip the paper over and repeat, this time with the most recent rhombus below the center, putting in the new valley fold, 2 spaces from the center, with the mountain fold following 1 grid space away. This is a new diagonal pleat of the next rhombus, and we're going to put in that 3-way intersection above and 3-way intersection below. And these are both going to lay down flat to prepare for our future trapezoid twists. Flipping the paper over again. Now I've got that most recent rhombus above the center, and I'll do the same thing, adding in the new pleat at the same spacing. You can also say the valley hits in the outer edge of the rhombus slit, and setting up my 3-way intersections above and below. I can get that all prepped and then flip over, again putting that most recent rhombus down below, and we will have a extra triangle wrap in here. Because we have this extra pleat from our first rhombus. And popping that mountain down, I can go ahead and find the triangle wrap. And then the through line for this rhombus twist is going to lay down like an accordion on top of that triangle wrap. And we're going to still put in our 3-way intersection above and 3-way intersection below. And I do realize that I have kind of glossed over precisely how to do the 3-way intersection above and below. And if you need more help with that, you can go back to days 9 and 10, where I teach it much more explicitly. Then at this 3-way intersection, we're going to flip over and turn specifically the 3-way intersection that's right around the center into a new rhombus twist. Our central diamond is sitting right on top there. We're going to open it up and put in, again, the 3-way intersection above and below on this side, and we could go ahead and do that on the other side of the rhombus twist as well. I'm just going to hold off partly for an excuse to get to the other side of the paper, and partly because it's a different orientation than we've seen it already. So the other side of the paper has that more familiar setup where we're interrupting the pleat from the rhombus, one space out from the fat corner, having that valley go in, and then we have our three-way intersection laying on top of the rhombus. Okay, so that's all well and good. And now it's time to start folding some trapezoid twists. So I'm on side A, I'm looking right now at the crease pattern, and what it's telling me is that this three-way intersection becomes a trapezoid twist with the okay, cool. Okay, this is where it's really important when you're reading your crease patterns to pay attention to exactly which pleat you're holding, because I've got these two three-way intersections that are both going to become trapezoid twists on this side of the paper. They're going to do so with different orientations, and they're going to run into the same kind of problems because they both have those three-way intersections on the other side, where they're going to need to have double depth pleats passing in that direction. But it's important to be able to distinguish between them to get started. So it's a bit of a toss-up, honestly, which one you go with first. I'm going to go with this one that's layered on top, somewhat arbitrarily. And one of the things that I'm reading off of the crease pattern is that I'm going to need a pleat coming down through here, one space away from this existing fold. And that is going to be the middle of my 3 single depth pleats. So I'm going to take that and run it down through everything else here. And then if that's the middle of my single depth pleats, then my double depth pleat is going out here. And then I've got my single depth pleat over here. So if I want to fold this, let's see if I can possibly get a wrap going that would help. It looks unlikely, frankly, but we are going to try. We are going to give it a solid try. Because this is the same situation that we ran into at the end of the middle ring around the center yesterday. But let's see if we can possibly figure this one out. Oh my goodness. Is that really going to work? No. No, it's not. Would be nice. Would be nice if it worked. But it does not. So I will put my paper back into the orientation. And what I'm going to do here in this situation where things are not wanting to sit down and be happy, So I'm going to do some air folding. So I'm making sure that everything around this area of tension is okay. Like I'm making sure that this pleat is good and the pleat under there is good and the rhombus twist and the rhombus twist on the other side. I'm making sure all of those are good. And then I can start squashing this side of the twist. I can start moving into this side, and I'm going to do something I usually say never to do. I'm going to pinch out here and pinch and kind of pull and get the paper to kind of extend out. And I'm going to air fold this trapezoid twist. So folding in the air, I'm still making sure that my corners are ending up at grid intersections, and like this fold through the middle is going through the grid intersection. But this is not as firm of folds as I'm going to have eventually when I squash that trapezoid on the other side. So now I'll flip over and find the pleats for my new trapezoid twist. Notice here that I have another pleat. Okay, that was off screen. So I've got this 3D area. I'm trying to find the new trapezoid twist. And there it is. Here on the double depth pleat, I have the mountain fold of the double depth pleat that becomes the mountain of the single depth pleat, the middle single depth. And so I've got 1, 2, and then 3 single depth pleats. And just like yesterday, we've got this one grid spacing of valley between the corner of the trapezoid on the other side and the corner of this trapezoid. And this pleat going over, I cannot dissociate away like I do on the skinny corners because it's on one of those fatter corners. So what I'm going to do instead is pop this up, and this middle single depth plate, the mountain should be going on this grid line, but I'm going to switch it to the other grid line coming off of this corner. Oh, not under the text. And that is going to allow me, so by switching, so I had this pleat folded on top. I want to fold this twist. I'm going to pop it open and then take my mountain fold from this grid line to this one over here, making a 3-way intersection of mountains. I'm going to put a valley on the far side of this pleat, and that allows me to have a double depth pleat under here. And press to squash. So I've reached a stable state in this direction. And I think what I want to try to do as much as possible is avoid going in this direction. As much as possible. We'll find out. We'll find out what's possible. So now I'm going to try and work in this direction. And let's see, this is my middle single depth pleat. That needs to go to a triangle twist. That's going to go in here, which does not look like a promising way to start working on another twist. Like, let's send a pleat through the middle. But bringing it back to where it was before, what I'm going to do is set up a 3-way intersection for the triangle. So I've got my mountain out here. My center of the twist is going to be one space out from where this pleat comes out from under the pleat on top of it. I'm going to make a three-way intersection, and instead of twisting, I'm going to lay this three-way intersection down flat. Notice this is still very 3D in here. Then I will flip over, and I need to fold another trapezoid twist. And in order to get this trapezoid twist to work, I need to, I need to glom on. So here's where it was. I've got 1 point of a puffy hexagon star. 1 point is already sticking up. That's the 3D-ness that I saw on the other side. Here's my other point, and I'm going to use that to make a double depth pleat on top of the triangle wrap. This is going to disrupt my triangle wrap in here because I don't want a valley fold where it was before. I want the valley to be 2 spaces from the mountain. So this triangle wrap is going to need to shift. I can restore the pleat from the corner of the rhombus, let it run 1 more spacing, and then do the triangle wrap underneath. And I still have another grid spacing worth of contraction. Or the other thing I can do is just restore the pleat from that rhombus all the way to the edge, because I'm going to need to fold through this rhombus anyways. And fold my double depth pleat through everything that's over here. So this is where it's really convenient that we are using only twists where the grid lines on the inside after it's squashed line up with the grid lines on the outside. So I can fold through twists and it won't add new creases. Of course, depending on your paper, if you're using super thin paper, this might not be true. But for Skytone, you can do this without a problem. You just want to avoid really pressing on those folds. So I can get my new trapezoid twist in place and press to squash. And then flip over. There's this triangle that I had tried setting up earlier. Now I can actually squash it. And then I'll follow my overlap to my next trapezoid twist. Opening up, I'm going to run a new pleat 1 space away from this existing pleat. You see this triangle on 3-way intersection that was set up. I'm going to keep that folded, pass my new pleat through, and then find my 3rd pleat of the trapezoid. So we've got our double depth pleat coming from the trapezoid we just put in. That mountain fold is going to be the middle single depth pleat. We've got our other single depth pleat here. Our 3rd one is going to hit 1 space over. We can also say the valley of this pleat is going to hit where the double depth pleat emerges from under the next pleat. And press to squash. So we got through a pair of trapezoids without air folding. That's big. And only possible in this direction. Next up, we're following the overlap. We have this next 3-way intersection that's feeding into a trapezoid, and we're going to need a triangle in the middle of the group of trapezoids. So I'll have my valley fold and that will interrupt the mountain that we just sent on down through, and put in a triangle wrap. Now, that is my middle, is that my middle single depth pleat? Yeah, it's my middle single depth pleat. And, oh no, it's not the middle. It would be the middle, but the middle is going this way, but it got moved for the wrap. It can be challenging at times to find exactly what's going on with the trapezoid. The key thing is that these are our pointy bits of the star. We're going to need a double depth pleat with this triangle wrap, and we're going to have the double depth pleat going down through here. So here's where we can restore the pleat coming out of the rhombus twist, and then lay that down and fold through a bunch of stuff. Make sure when you're doing this that you are folding a double depth pleat. To get the new trapezoid twist. So yes, this is a bit of a funkier sequence than yesterday, but we can still do it while mostly avoiding air folding. Flipping over, we have the triangle that was wrapped, and even though this is a double depth pleat, we're just flipping one grid spacing of that triangle, basically splitting the double depth pleat back into two single depth pleats. And then it's time to put in the next trapezoid. This is the double depth pleat from the previous trapezoid. So we're going to open things up and let that mountain fold carry on through. And remember, when you open things up, there was a valley of a double depth pleat going through there. We want to erase that valley as well. And then continue finding our open trapezoid twist. And then we can press to squash. Then we have the very angry overlaps again, and we will want a triangle wrap going into the middle of the group of 3 trapezoids. And that is the mountain fold of the double depth pleat. So we get our third single depth pleat that adds another grid spacing to the triangle wrap, making that double depth. And we're going to restore the pleat to this rhombus twist. And things are so locked in place, we're just going to fold through that rhombus, through a bunch of other stuff, all the way out to the edge of the paper. And press to squash our trapezoid. Then we'll flip over, find that triangle wrap, and squash the twist. Then open up the giant pleat going through everything. Notice this is the mountain of our double depth pleat. Opening up and carefully, gently running that mountain through and finding the third single depth pleat. Yeah, you can say there's a reason why I've only folded in this structure with closed rhombus, closed triangle, open trapezoid. And that's because it does make it easier when you need to run the pleats through existing twists. And then here we are going to set up our triangle wrap, which ends up being a double depth pleat, and we'll restore the pleat from the rhombus in here because we want to run the double depth pleat of the trapezoid through, and this really will hit a bunch of stuff. We get lucky that these stacked up layers are in between the mountain and valley folds, and so we do not have to fold through them. Flipping over, I'm going to squash my triangle that was wrapped, and then open up all of this mess. Continue putting this mountain fold through. This time that will hit a bunch of our layers that had accumulated from wraps on our earlier trapezoids. And put in the third single depth pleat to finish setting up, and then squash our trapezoid twist. From there, we'll repeat again, adding a second trapezoid to this cluster, getting the triangle wrap that becomes a double depth pleat when the third single depth pleat is added to it. We'll restore this pleat from the rhombus, and I'm noticing we're getting into a sticky situation because we have, okay. So if I restore the pleat from the rhombus and restore the pleat from this trapezoid on the back, so notice on the other side what I'm doing is I'm taking this corner that had been like poked out this way and there was some kind of wrap going on. But if I just let both of those pleats do their thing, then that provides a good surface for the double depth pleat to come through. And yes, it will feel like you're folding literally everything in the pattern. And really, we just want that side to be stable. We want it at least stable right here. We don't have to press hard or anything. And then we can press to squash our new twist. Lots of layers right in here. And flipping back, I can squash the triangle that was wrapped. And then open up. I'm opening back up. Haven't added any new creases. Right here I have the mountain of my double depth pleat, which is going right under this next trapezoid. I'm going to wrap, do a triangle wrap there, And then the third single depth pleat will come right on along, and I can press to squash the trapezoid twist. So this is a case where starting the ring around the center was harder than finishing the ring. Once we had it started, we could get around. It took a lot of folding through existing twists, which I don't prefer, but I'll take that over air folding. And those were my choices. And then I can flip over and squash that last triangle twist. It's actually the last in the pattern. And we're going to go around the outside and add the final trapezoid to each cluster and 2 rhombus twists for each corner. So I may as well start with this trapezoid. I'm going to be putting in a triangle wrap. So I know I said I would be folding rhombuses. You can also set up the corner of the rhombus with a triangle wrap. So I've got my valley coming through, interrupting the mountain one space from the corner of the existing trapezoid. That's going to wrap, and it's actually going to wrap hard because the valley of my double depth pleat is going to come right in on top of there. And I can open up a bit more. And so we just had the middle single depth pleat in place. This is our one on the left, and then we also need one on the right. This is also going to cause a triangle wrap. And then we have the double depth pleat heading out to the edge. Okay, so my choice from here is, do I go clockwise or do I go counterclockwise? I'm going to guess that counterclockwise is the better bet because it would have us starting on a shorter pleat. Things would be less likely to send pleats into existing twists. And so I'm going to grab that overlap and flip over and use that to put in a rhombus twist. So we saw for our 6th rhombus that putting in a rhombus from a triangle wrap means that your central diamond is sitting right on top. And with that, I'm going to have the through line mountain fold, and then the valley fold associated with that is going to hit one space out from the open triangle corner. And I will pop that valley down. Now these are hitting at 60 degrees, so this will be a compound wrap. And my new pleat goes off to the edge of the paper, no problem. And we can press to squash. And then flipping over, I'll take that compound wrap and pop it open, and that's going to become another rhombus twist, and I will need another compound wrap off of the side. This is going to make it look like a closed trapezoid. So I've got the double depth pleat, I've got the broomstick pattern of single depth pleats, but that's because the pleat that would have gone this way is now part of that compound wrap. And for the layering here, this pleat has to go under the double depth pleat. So if you've got things 3D over here and can't figure it out, tuck the pleat under the trapezoid. and press to squash. Then we'll flip over and open up the compound wrap, put in a new triangle wrap, and presto, there's the new trapezoid twist. The thing to be careful about here is we don't want to pull open the pleat from the rhombus twist, and we need to let that rhombus tuck under the double depth pleat, or rather tuck inside. Let the double depth pleat wrap around the rhombus twist because it literally can't fit in the other arrangement. And press to squash. And that really is the full story of how we're going to work our way around the outside. We're going to flip over. We've got the triangle wrap there. I'll leave the additional theory for later. We're going to put in a compound wrap as we add our new rhombus twist, and press to squash. Then flip over, and one of the things to pay attention to know whether the compound wrap is going to be a rhombus or a trapezoid is that we're going to end up with a rhombus twist on each side of these triangles. So we've got a triangle, it's headed into this compound situation. That is going to be a rhombus twist, and we're going to get a new compound wrap out of it that's going to make it look a lot like a closed trapezoid for now. And press to squash. Then flip over, and the other way you can tell the difference is the only trapezoids we're going to fold in this ring around the center are going to complete clusters of 3 trapezoids. So if there's not other trapezoids nearby, it needs to be a rhombus twist. And here we'll put in a triangle wrap and make sure that our double depth plate is wrapping around that rhombus on the other side that we just put in, and press to squash. Flipping the paper over, we'll repeat, putting in a rhombus twist and a compound wrap. So the sequence here is rhombus, then another rhombus, then trapezoid. So rhombus 1, flip, open the compound wrap, put in another compound wrap, rhombus 2, squash, flip, and then trapezoid with a triangle wrap. So the fun fact that I held off on earlier is that in each of these corners, we actually get to decide if we're folding 2 rhombus twists or 4 triangle twists. I'll stick to the rhombus twists, but you can see in the alternate ending for one of the alternate endings for yesterday's pattern in the Advent of Tess ebook that each of these areas between the groups of trapezoid twists can be filled with either 6 rhombus twists like we did today, or 12 triangle twists like we did yesterday. And that is every time, like every area between these trapezoids can be independently chosen. And that's one of the really cool things about this pattern, and why I included it, even though it's really hard, is because you do get this really cool connection between the patterns that you don't often see in other situations. Like it's not often that you can change the tiling and just swap out the twists. Over here, one thing that I'm noticing as I'm getting towards the end is that I made this triangle wrap around all the other layers. I actually want that to be below this trapezoid because we're going to get to it last. And that trick of swapping out whether you're using rhombus or triangles or triangle twists between the trapezoid clusters isn't the only trick available with this tiling. There's, and I know I started talking before I was done folding. There's another alternative where once you've made the jump to rhombus twists, you can actually swap out some of the the trapezoid clusters for mixed depth hexagon twists. It's pretty wild. I'll show that in just a minute as we wind up this pad. Whoop, that should have been a trapezoid. I should have known because I was making sure that the pleat over here was tucked under. But it's okay, we can always go and fix it. There are very few extra lines. There's just one extra right there. And then we'll finish off with 2 rhombus twists. So notice when we go to fold this rhombus, I have this extra pleat in here, which means that I will actually do a triangle wrap right next to the other triangle wrap to get this rhombus twist in place. And we have seen this move in earlier days when we were working extensively with the rhombus and triangle twists. And then when we flip over this last rhombus, I'm going to push this mountain fold over one spacing. Notice I'm lifting this double depth pleat because the double depth pleat has to go on top of the rhombus, but it can't really go there until the rhombus is mostly squashed. So that's another thing that makes this pattern difficult, just the layering. And so we get our pattern. Oh, I didn't mention this one's named Syzygy. And that was a new word for me too. I forget exactly what it means, but something like combining things into a new whole. So we've got our new pattern with these flagstone motifs of trapezoid twists on both sides of the paper, spaced really closely together. It is possible to space these further apart, but then of course it wouldn't fit on the grid that we have here. So if you're spacing things further apart, start with the rhombus twists further apart, and that will feed into the trapezoids being further apart. That is our pattern for today. Let's take a look at the backlighting and how it repeats. So the backlighting we get those stars that we see with the groups of 6 rhombus twists, and our triangles of trapezoids on both sides of the paper. And when it repeats more, you get to see those triangles of trapezoids more clearly because there's not extra paper obscuring some of the holes. So yeah, you get these really cool effects. And then what I mentioned earlier is that if you're starting with a bunch of rhombus twists in the middle, you can then also swap out some of the groups of trapezoids for mixed depth hexagons with triangles on the other side. So yeah, you get the same kind of stars that we see in the middle. So the possibilities are really limitless when it comes to these kinds of patterns. And if you want to know more about how to design these kinds of patterns, definitely check out Advanced Twist Techniques. If you want more practice folding these very difficult patterns, Tessellation Academy is the way to go, because you'll learn not only how to fold, but also why and how to design. So you can get a whole bunch of upgrades to your skills by looking at these specific topics, one topic per month, and really digging deep and understanding what's going on. Why are we making the decisions that we are in both the folding process and in designing? So both Advanced Twist Techniques and Tessellation Academy can be found at training.gatheringfolds.com. And happy folding, everyone. I do want to see what you've folded, especially with these harder patterns. So make sure to tag me at Gathering Folds on Instagram or Facebook, or post on my Discord server when you've folded and photographed your tessellation, and I'd love to see what you make. So happy folding, and see you tomorrow.